Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to welcome my other ATU sister and brother locals, William Wright, 1605, Levon, 256, Vic, 265, 1277 out of LA. And I don't know if we have anybody from BART, but ATU 1555. My brother from San Francisco, 1277, welcome. It is gone. So therefore, we are here to wake up the community, because we need to start sending a loud message to the politicians who provide the funding that transportation is a means of living. When we take away transportation, we put a damper on seniors' lives. People are not able to get to doctor's appointments. Children are not able to get to school. This is a major crisis. They need to look at it as a major crisis, and we need funding now. Transportation working together, we can do it.
What we're after, it's very, very simple. This money has already been appropriated, so we're not going to Congress asking for new money. We're simply asking for those dollars that have already been appropriated, that they appropriate for capital funding, can be used at the transit authority's discretion to keep the buses rolling. And that's what we have to do, and that's the message we have to send back to the Congress. And with your help, we're going to be able to do that. I've been told that here in San Francisco, the mayor, for some reason, clearly has his head up his ass. He's trying to take away concessions and concessions, and it's time to tell them to stop trying to balance their damn budget on the backs of the workers. It ain't going to happen. It seems every place we go across the country, public employers particularly, are trying to use the economy to get concessions that they haven't been able to get at the bargaining table for 20, 30 years. And we need to tell them loud and clear that when they come to the bargaining table and say, oh, they're broke and we need you to give concessions, you tell them we ain't giving up shit.
We're all in this together. And we have to, there's a ballot measure that's going to be put on the ballot in November that's going to try to divide riders from drivers. We as San Franciscans have to say no to those efforts. We have to say that Muni is something that we all have a responsibility to fix. We can't point the finger at labor and ignore what management is doing. We can't ignore the fact that we have a system that is getting money that is not being used well. What are we hearing from the mayor and some supervisors when it comes to the labor, when it comes to the mismanagement that Muni has faced for so many years? We hear zero. The only thing we hear is pointing the finger at the driver.
I don't really want to personally attack Mayor Newsom, but I really agree that he has his head up his ass. I mean, how can you pit the people against the drivers? You know, the drivers enough have a hard job as I think that's one of the hardest jobs on all the planet, because you deal with over 4,000 plus people throughout a workday. I mean, they're getting spit on, kicked, their buses break down, they go through so much stress and turmoil. Some of them have to work crazy hours, they have families, kids they have to raise, and then they have to worry about their pay, their hours getting cut, possibly not even having a job. So come on, it's not right. You know, if you're going to be a mayor of a city is supposed to keep the city together, not tear it apart.
You think the San Francisco Labor Council and the California AFL-CIO should be supporting him for lieutenant governor?
No! How can you support him for lieutenant governor when he's not even doing a good job as a mayor? So I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's what is it? The definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, except expecting a different result. So he's going to do the same thing as lieutenant governor as he's doing as mayor. So it doesn't make any sense.
We are out here for the transit unions, getting funding for the transit. We need money. Okay. for transit, public transportation is hurting bad.
How bad, personally, is it?
Bad.
How are you affected?
How we affected, we got layoffs. Drivers are being laid off and you're buying new buses. What are you buying new buses for if you don't have a driver to drive it? The bus. You buy a $500,000 bus and you can't pay a $40,000 driver salary. That ain't too good, is it? Okay? All right.
That's kind of irrational. Irrational. What's happening? Why is that happening?
Well, the funding's dwindling. The governor, the governor took funding from transit, public transportation, and sending it somewhere else. Okay? He's helping take public transportation money from transit and help run the state. Okay? That's the problem.
Where do you work?
County Connection, 1605. My name is William Wright. I'm the president of the union.
Well, you know, there's an attack on public workers in general. In particular, here we're talking about transit workers who are the scapegoats. And what we need is adequate funding to keep public transit alive. And the state and the feds at the moment are not doing that. And so what this rally is today is about calling on the state and the feds to be sure that we give adequate funding to make sure we keep transit going. But public workers across the state of California are suffering this. The right wing is going after public workers, they're going after public worker pensions, and the current proposals from people like Meg Whitman running for governor are, let's cut taxes for the wealthy, cut taxes for public corporations, and cut jobs and cut pensions for public workers. It doesn't work. That's why we're vigorously involved in politics of November this year.
Were you surprised that the international president of the ATU attacked Mayor Newsom and said he had his head up his ass?
No, I don't. I'm not involved in the internal politics between the union and the local management, so I'm not familiar with it at all.
Well, there was a lot of mention made about the fact that Mayor Newsom has attacked union drivers, is supporting a ballot proposition that would attack their conditions and benefits. Are you going to consider withdrawing your endorsement of Mayor Newsom, Lieutenant Governor?
We haven't had any requests for us to even consider that. We haven't heard any report from the local folks about any problems. So I would refer you to the local folks on that. I really don't know anything about it.
So there is a possibility if the local folks want to withdraw.
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I said for us to go through a process, we need to have information from our local folks. We haven't received any information from our local folks, and so I can't even comment on anything, not knowing anything about it, until I hear from our local folks about anything. And I haven't heard any intent to communicate with us about any problems.
What we need to do is first we need to build solidarity among our members in all the transit locals. We're about to circulate a solidarity pledge that none of us work overtime if the other unions are forced to go on strike. We're also asking for people to do no day off work, and also to visit our picket lines if we go on strike. For example, we did the same thing with our BART unions. Our local passed a resolution that we would not work any overtime if BART workers went out, because they always want to add extra service along the parallel lines to undercut the effectiveness of a strike. I think one of the things that's missing today from this discussion around the lack of funding is the fact that workers have power, not just at the ballot box, which we have very limited power, but we have power at the point of production. And if the workers took job actions like a strike and actions at the workplace to stop the service of transportation, which is essential for the functioning of the economy in the Bay Area, we could really show our power and show that workers should win decent wages and working conditions and lower fares for all working people in the Bay Area.
What do you think about, what the ATU president said, that the Mayor Newsom has his head up his ass, and the fact at the same time that the unions, the San Francisco Labor Council and California AFSCME, are supporting him for lieutenant governor?
Well, I think it's clear that finally some union people are beginning to see what side Newsom is on. But I think it's a this whole thing today is Tim Paulson organizes is the MC of this thing, who's trying to push concessions on muni workers twice and maybe a third time. He was along with Newsom. I don't think those are friends of labor, and even some of the ATU leadership, they were not here to attack, to unite workers in the attacks on BART. We forced them to take concessions. They left them hanging in the wind. And I think that, you know, the real power of the unions come from us sticking together and not just coming together when we want to undo some of the legislation. For example, the elimination of operating subsidy at a federal level was eliminated under the Clinton administration. They don't want to talk about that because that's a Democrat. But as a matter of fact, that the Democrats have been behind a lot of these. Where was the uproar when Schwarzenegger stole all this transit dedicated funding? There was no uproar.
Because they lost their transfers. And then, I mean, the corporations pay for the media.